Hello, I'm Leann Chivers, a guest presenter here on Create and Craft. I'm here today to bring these new to you online videos to you, and we're going to be looking today at alcohol markers. We're going to have a look at what an alcohol marker is, how you will use an alcohol marker, and so you can see some of the really almost printed quality effects you can achieve with them once you get to grips with how they work. So an alcohol marker is solvent based. It's a dye suspended in a solvent solution, which means that they give you a lovely smooth, vibrant effect on your card, but also that they will evaporate quickly. So it's important that you know how to use them. Most alcohol markers will have two ends, and they will either have a brush and a bullet or a chisel and a bullet. There'll be different configurations depending on which brand you choose to use. We're using one that has a chisel and a bullet today, and we're going to have a look at how the ink moves on the card. So you can use either end. You really need an uncoated, smooth finished card, not regular copy paper, and not the regular card that you would usually craft with in your paper crafting, because it's too porous. So anything too porous will just suck the ink out of your pen and not let you get a lovely smooth blend, which is what we're aiming for here. And you really need to get a feel for how that ink lays down in the card and then evaporates, and get a feel for how you fill the fibres in the card and move the ink around. So practicing a basic outline like this, like a heart or a circle, and just filling it with colour really gives you the opportunity to get to grips with how an alcohol marker operates. And you can see that when I'm flooding this with colour, it's evaporating really quickly. So you don't have to worry about getting lines. It's not like the felt tips we all had at school. You will get a really beautiful, smooth, vibrant result, but you get that once you've flooded the card with colour. So you can see I've got a lovely solid heart shape there. And I've used a lovely stamping card, which is very smooth and not too porous. A couple of other things that are very important when you're starting out is that you should really never colour on top of one of your glass crafting mats or a cutting mat. It should always be on something porous and scrap, because if I pick this up and show you, what you can see here is that the colour has come through to the back. It should absolutely do that. To get a lovely smooth blend, the ink needs to move in the fibres of the card. What has happened though is any of the excess that hasn't been able to be absorbed in this card has come through onto my scrap below, and that's really important, because if it doesn't do that, it would, like cotton wool and water, wick back through the card and bleed out beyond your image and not give you a very smooth effect. So get to grips with that, with a smooth blend, and then you can move on to start getting some light and shade in your images. And you can see here I've just filled with 3 different colours just to practice and really get to grips with that. Once you've got to grips with doing your smooth blend, you're going to move on and you're going to practice creating some light and shade and dimension in your colouring. So we've got here 3 different shapes which you could do in 3 different ways to practice where the dimension would come from. The first one we're going to start with is my sphere shape here, and I would recommend that you do practice on very basic outlines like this. If you try to start and practice on a complicated stamped image, you're just going to get frustrated with yourself initially. So I've got 3 colours. I've got a light, a medium and a dark, and it's important that you have several different colours when you're colouring. That's how you get a 3D look to your finished image. So we're going to start with the lightest yellow colour that I have here. And we're going to colour the entire sphere shape that I have, the entire circle. And to start and do this, we're really moving on from that smooth technique that we've just looked at, because I am flooding this sphere with colour, because for ink to blend, it needs to be wet. So we need to get a good coverage down there. So that's the first colour, and that's exactly the same techniques we've just looked at for a smooth blend. I've filled that sphere with that colour. Then I'm going to take the darkest of my 3 colours and I'm going to outline the sphere around the outside, because I want this to look like a 3D object, which is lighter in the middle and dark around the outsides. So I put my darker colour around the outside. Then I take my middle colour, my medium, so my join between the dark and the light. I go to the edge of that dark colour which blends it in, and then I bring the medium colour further into the centre of that sphere. So you can see I've got the 3 different colours there. And then I go back to my lightest one and I blend out the middle colour into the centre again. And you can see how that now looks like it has much more dimension than one of the flat images we coloured. If we look at the heart again and we look at the yellow, you can see how this looks very flat, although I've used one of the same colours, and this looks like it has much more dimension because it goes from light to the dark. You would then continue and practice that with a cylinder and a triangle. So I'll show you how to do those very quickly as well. So with the cylinder shape, that's going to be darker at the outsides and you're going to build volume in the centre. So using the same techniques we've just looked at, we're going to use our lightest colour and we're going to flood the image. So you can see again that was exactly the same technique as when we did our smooth colour. So you can see how all of these different techniques build up to give you a final result. And then we're going to take our darkest colour, and I'm just going to rotate this because I'm going to flick in from the side. Now I'm working on one side at a time because I want to work on a lovely smooth blend. If I try and work on both sides at the same time, my ink is going to dry too quickly and I'm not going to be able to get it to blend. So always just work on a small area at a time. So this is my darkest colour, and I'm flicking that into the centre. And then I take my next darkest, so the next lightest if you like, and then we flick that from the edge of that dark colour a little bit further into the centre. And then we would do the same again with the next lightest. A little bit further into the centre. And then if you want to really smooth that out, you just repeat the process with those pens, same pens again, while the ink is wet. So we're building volume in the image here. And then we turn that round and we do exactly the same again from the other side. So we start at the edge with the darkest colour and we flick out into the centre, building volume. Notice I'm not going right into the middle. I'm preserving my highlight there because the highlight in the centre is what gives the illusion of volume in this cylindrical shape. So it's important that you preserve that and don't go right over it when you're adding your dark edges. So you can see just by doing that, I've managed to create an object which looks cylindrical and looks like it has the volume in the centre, like the light is hitting it. And that's gone from a flat object into something that has dimension. And that's what you do with using several colours of your alcohol markers. To make the inside look as though it has volume, I'm going to just edge it a little bit with the darker colour and just build up the different layers exactly as I did when I was building volume from the edges. Except this time, instead of flicking it, we're using the same technique we used on our sphere because this is a round shape, not a cylindrical shape. And as you move on and you get more experience with your alcohol markers, you will start to break down every image you look at in terms of whether it's a sphere, a cylinder or a triangle. You'll apply the shading technique to it and you will get beautiful 3D objects at the end. So you can see how that's now got much more volume. So the final one that you would need to learn to colour in terms of a shape is a triangle. And a triangle has dark here and light in the centre. So if we just take 3 colours, again, and we flood, so again we're using the same techniques we've used before. We always flood first because wet ink blends, dry ink doesn't. Then we take our darkest colour and we're going to make it dark at the edges. And I'm using an extreme contrast here so you can see what I'm doing. You might want to use something a little more subtle when you're trying it yourself. And then we'll use our mid-tone. And exactly as we did before with the cylinder and the sphere, we blend the dark into the light and bring in 3 different levels of colour, getting lighter as it goes to the centre. And then back to the lightest colour. I'm going to blend that mid-tone out into the triangle shape. And that's how you would build volume on a triangle. So that's, at its basic form, how you blend with an alcohol marker and build volume. So it shows you what they can do. But then when you take that and you apply it to some images, as I have here, you can see that's when you really start to build some dimension in the images that you've coloured. So you can see the top lantern here is coloured as is my sphere. So it's dark around the outside, lighter in the centre, which gives a 3D volume. This plant pot is coloured exactly as I've done the cylinder. So I've been able to give 3D dimension and volume to the plant pot. And then this butterfly is simply a series of triangles which have been coloured in the same way. So dark at the peak of the triangle, getting lighter as it goes out. And I've done that 4 times so that each triangle is darker in the centre of where the butterfly's body, coming out lighter. And you can see how that creates beautiful volume and 3D dimension. So that's the basics of how you build volume with your alcohol markers. And there'll be other clips to show you how to take those techniques and do some other really fantastic things with them.